Vice President of the EU Parliament, Eva Kaili, is among the 4 people being held in a graft investigation. Kaili, who's also a Greek MEP, had been suspended from her duties. Now the Belgian judicial system's looking into allegations that officials from Qatar had attempted to bribe her and 3 other parliamentary assistants in exchange for political favours. Well, for more on that story, we're joined by our Brussels correspondent, Dave Keating. So, Dave, the latest news that we have is that Eva Kaili will indeed be staying in police custody along with those 3 other people. What else do we know?
Yeah, I mean, this scandal is really rocking Brussels this weekend. It feels like it's all anyone can talk about. In the next days, we're probably going to get more details about the contours of this investigation. But we know that Vice President Kaili had her duties suspended. In order to actually suspend her from her vice presidential position, it'll take a decision by the Conference of Presidents in the Parliament. That's probably coming in the next days. We're expecting a pretty strong reaction from the Parliament. But it does look like this is just getting bigger. And so what we know so far is that Kaili and 4 assistants were detained on Friday, and that 600,000 euros at least were confiscated, along with laptops, with cell phones. We know that there were 16 searches conducted by the Belgian Federal Police on Friday. This all seems to revolve around 2 common threads. One is the center-left group in the European Parliament, and the other is this group of Italian NGOs. There is a strong Italian connection here we can see when we look into who's been arrested, and we know that Kaili's partner, who is Italian, has also been arrested, and there's an NGO that he founded called Fight Impunity, which is now being looked at along with 2 other Italian NGOs. So it looks as if there is a connection here with Italy, there's a connection here with trade unions. Now we know that Kaili, in the relatively recent past, was going out of her way to defend Qatar amid the controversy that the country is experiencing as it hosts the World Cup about its treatment of migrant workers in that country. She called Qatar a front runner on labor rights just a couple months ago. We know that she showed up to a vote in the European Parliament in a committee that was looking at whether to have visa liberalization for Qatari citizens. That's a committee she's not even a member of. And more instances of this are being dug out now as people really look at what she's been involved with when it comes to Qatar, things that don't even have anything to do with her duties. So we're learning more and more as this goes along. But again, the common thread here seems to be that this was something targeting particularly lawmakers on the left and particularly trade unions based here in Brussels.
Now, Dave, as you mentioned, this is news that is really rocking Brussels, quite shocking. What are the consequences, in your view, for the European Parliament's reputation?
Yeah, already people are calling this the most serious ethics scandal to hit the European Parliament in decades. And some people have pointed out, look, this really highlights a big loophole in the Parliament's transparency rules around lobbying. The European Parliament actually has pretty strong rules about being open and transparent about lobbying, but there is a giant loophole, which is that 3rd countries, like Qatar, any country, is exempt from those requirements. So Qatar would not have had to declare its meetings with MEPs, those MEPs would not have had to declare meetings that they've had with Qatar in the same way that meetings with businesses would need to be declared. So we've already had voices saying, look, this loophole needs to be closed. This is a dangerous moment for the European Parliament. This is an institution that is always, since its founding, when it became directly elected in 1979, has always been fighting for its own relevance. There's always an instinct by the other institutions, the Council of the National Governments, the Commission, which is the executive, to sideline the European Parliament. They always have to fight for their relevance here. And so this will make a lot of MEPs very nervous, because if there is this idea that the Parliament is easily on the take, that's very dangerous. But the other thing people are pointing out here is, of course, the Parliament doesn't really have any identifiable power over issues like the World Cup or EU relations with Qatar. But the more you look into it, the more you realize actually there were some pretty influential decisions here. They were looking at this visa liberalization idea that is now on hold. We're told that that is not going to be advancing any longer in the European Parliament. So if you take a look at the broader picture, not just the World Cup, but in general, how the EU is talking about Qatar's record on human rights, I think it will become more clear in the coming days what the motivation here was and whether or not it was effective.
Thank you very much, Dave Keating, there reporting for us from Brussels.